Hello and welcome to this first look exploring session, beginning our journey through Bussy D'Ambois, or Bussy D'Ambois, by George Chapman. This is a slightly tricky text to deal with. There are two slightly different textual versions. This version that we're going to work through sort of elides the best, as it were, discuss of the two. So for the readers, occasionally you'll see a square bracket and that opens a section, and that may be a later addition that is added. There are minor textual variations between the two, so just depending on which version you, if you are following along at home, are looking at, you may notice that it's not quite the same. But that level of minutiae we will deal with later on in future iterations further down the line. But for the moment, we're doing this either compromise or compromised. You can decide later. Version of the text. So reading today, Bussy, is
Brian from the Great Pacific Northwest.
Reading Montsurry and Pyrhot is
Bonjour. I will not show off any French. Hi, I'm Eric. I'm here.
Reading Henry or Henri and Barrisor is
Alan in Suffolk.
Reading Maffe, Tamyra, and Brisac is.
Hi, I'm Lynn. I am also, along with Brian, in the Pacific Northwest of the United States.
Reading Duchess, Nuncius, Pyrhot, and Friar is.
Alίκη in the Atlantic Northwest of England.
Reading Monsieur and Lynn is.
Rachel in Canada.
Reading Guise and Melynell is.
Sarah in Germany.
And reading Prologue and Beaupre is.
Hi, it's Greg, just outside Stratford-on-Avon.
And I'm your host, Robert Crighton, and I am reading Stage Directions. Aren't I lucky? So I say, because this text comes from slightly different periods, we've got different material from different places, and so we're going to begin with one of the later elements of the text, just to confuse you, because we're going to begin with a prologue from presumably a later revival. So, prologue away, please.
Not out of confidence that none but we are able to present this tragedy, nor out of envy at the grace of late it did receive, nor yet to derogate from their deserts, who give out boldly that they move with equal feet on the same flat. Neither for all nor any of such ends we offer it, gracious and noble friends, to your review. We, far from emulation, and charitably judged from imitation, with this work entertain you, a piece known, and still believed in court to be our own. To quit our claim, doubting our right or merit, would argue us in poverty of spirit, which we must not subscribe to. Field is gone, whose action first did give it name, and one who came the nearest to him is denied by his grey beard to show the height and pride of D'Ambois' youth and bravery. Yet to hold our title still, afoot and not grow cold by giving it a third man with his best of care and pains defends our interest. As Richard he was liked, nor do we fear. Impersonating D'Ambois he'll appear, to faint or go less, so your free consent, as heretofore, give him encouragement.
And so we have, it's a rather odd prologue because it comes from far later on, talking about cast changes, basically. This premiered some 25 years prior to this prologue being written, and oddly enough, it's not the young player isn't played by the same guy anymore. I wonder why. So it's a very time-specific prologue. It's not a prologue I'm thinking we necessarily. I've said this before. I said this last play we looked at. Oh no, this prologue isn't match fit. It's not. It's very of its time. And then I went, oh no, actually, it's quite important. So I could be wrong. This almost certainly isn't written by Chapman, who wrote the play. This is probably by someone else later on. Any thoughts on this little prologue? Field's gone. I mean, I'll be honest. He's not going to be in our revival. I don't think he's really up for it anymore. Alas. Yeah, Brian.
It's probably the first thing I would cut, I would think. At least in my first pass through, it seems entirely of its time and about things that are not directly relevant to anyone about to receive the rest of the play who isn't already invested in a previous cast.
Yeah, it's very useful for historians. It's very interesting on a historical note. It is not something we're going to keep. But, who knows? Might be wrong. Maybe there'll be in-jokes about Field later on that'll be very important, as we found when we were looking at Devil is an Ass in previous sessions. But... or possibly in future sessions, depending on when I release this video. So, let us, without further ado, dive into the actual content of the play. Act 1, Scene 1, enter Bussy D'Ambois, D'Ambois' Poor.
Fortune, not reason, rules the state of things. Reward goes backwards. Honor on his head. Who is not poor is monstrous. Only need gives form and worth to every human seed. As cedars beaten with continual storms, so great men flourish, and do imitate unskillful statuaries, who suppose, in forming a colossus, if they make him straddle enough, strut and look big and gape, their work is goodly. So men merely great in their affected gravity of voice, sourness of countenance, manners cruelty, authority, wealth, and all the spawn of fortune, think they bear all the kingdom's worth before them, yet differ not from those colossic statues, which, with heroic forms without o'erspread, within are naught but mortar, flint, and lead. Man is a torch born in the wind, a dream but of a shadow, summed with all his substance. And as great seamen, using all their wealth and skills in Neptune's deep invisible paths, in tall ships richly built and ribbed with brass, to put a girdle round the world, when they have done it, coming near their haven, are fain to give a warning piece, and call a poor staid fisherman, that never passed his country's sight, to waft and guide them in. So when we wander furthest through the waves of glassy glory, and the gulfs of state, topped with all titles, spreading all our reaches, as if each private arm would sphere the earth, we must to virtue for her guide resort, or we shall shipwreck in our safest port.
And prostrates himself, lies down in some fashion. Enter Monsieur with 2 pages.
There is no second place in the innumerous state that holds more than a cipher. In a king, all places are contained. His words and looks are like the flashes and the bolts of Jove, his deeds inimitable, like the sea that shuts still as it opes, and leaves no tracts, nor prints of precedent for mean men's facts. There's but a thread betwixt me and a crown. I would not wish it cut, unless by nature. Yet to prepare me for that possible fortune, 'tis good to get resolved spirits about me. I follow D'Ambois to this green retreat, a man of spirit beyond the reach of fear, who, discontent with his neglected worth, neglects the light, and loves obscure abodes. But he is young and haughty, apt to take fire at advancement, to bear state and flourish. In his rise, therefore, shall my bounties shine. None loathes the world so much, nor loves to scoff it, but gold and grace will make him surfeit of it. What, D'Ambois?
He, sir?
Turned to earth alive? Up, man! The sun shines on thee.
Let it shine. I am no mote to play in it, as great men are.
Callest thou great men in state motes in the sun? They say so that would have thee freeze in shades, that, like the gross Sicilian gourmandist, empty their noses in the cates they love, that none may eat but they. Do thou but bring light to the banquet fortune sets before thee, and thou wilt loath lean darkness like thy death. Who would believe thy metal could let sloth rust and consume it? If Themistocles had lived obscured thus in the Athenian state, Xerxes had made both him and its slaves, his slaves. If brave Camillus had lurked so in Rome, he had not 5 times been dictator there, nor 5 times triumphed. If Epaminondas, who lived twice 20 years obscured in Thebes, had lived so still, he had been still unnamed and paid his country nor himself their right. But putting forth his strength, he rescued both from imminent ruin. And, like burnished steel, long after her use he shined. For as the light not only serves to show, but render us mutually profitable, so our lives, in acts exemplary, not only win ourselves good names, but do to others give matter for virtuous deeds by which we live.
What would you wish me?
Leave the troubled streams and live where thrivers do, at the wellhead.
At the wellhead? Alas, what should I do with that enchanted glass? See devils there? Or, like a strumpet, learn to set my looks in an eternal break? Or practice juggling to keep my face still fast and my heart still loose? Or bear, like dames schoolmistresses, their riddles, 2 tongues, and be good only for a shift? Flatter great lords to put them still in mind why they were made lords, or please humorous ladies with a good carriage, tell them idle tales to make their physic work. Spend a man's life in sights and visitations, that will make his eyes as hollow as his mistress' heart. To do none good, but those who have no need. To gain being forward, though you break for haste all the commandments ere you break your fast. But believe backwards. Make your period in creed's last article, I believe in God. And, hearing villainies preached, to unfold their art, learn to commit them. 'Tis a great man's part. Shall I learn this there?
No, thou needst not learn. Thou hast the theory. Now go there and practice.
Aye, in a threadbare suit. When men come there, they must have high naps and go from thence bare. A man may drown the parts of 10 rich men in one poor suit. Brave barks and outward gloss attract court loves, be in parts ne'er so gross.
Thou shalt have gloss enough, and all things fit to encase in all show thy long smothered spirit. Be ruled by me then. The old Scythians painted blind Fortune's powerful hands with wings. To show her gifts come swiftly and suddenly, which if her favorite be not swift to take, he loses them forever. Then be wise. Stay but a while here, and I'll send to thee.
And exit Monsieur with the silent pages. Bussy remains.
What will he send? Some crowns? It is to sow them upon my spirit and make them spring a crown worth millions of the seed crowns he will send. Like to disparking noble husbandman, he'll put his plough into me, plough me up. But his unsweating thrift is policy, and learning-hating policy is ignorant to fit his seedland soil. A smooth, plain ground will never nourish any politic seed. I am for honest actions, not for great. If I may bring up a new fashion and rise in court for virtue, speed his plough. The king hath known me long as well as he, yet could my fortune never fit the length of both their understandings till this hour. There is a deep nick in time's restless wheel for each man's good, which, when which nick comes, it strikes. As rhetoric yet works not persuasion, but only as a mean to make it work. So man riseth by his real merit, but when it cries clink in his razor's spirit. Many will say that cannot rise at all. Man's first hour's rise is first step to his fall. I'll venture that. Men that fall low must die, as well as men cast headlong from the sky.
Enter Maffe.
Humor of princes, is this wretch endued with any merit worth 1,000 crowns? Will my lord have me be so ill a steward of his revenue to dispose a sum so great with so small cause as shows in him? I must examine this. Is your name D'Ambois?
Sir?
Is your name D'Ambois?
Who have we here? Serve you the monsieur?
How?
Serve you the monsieur?
Sir, you are very hot. I do serve the monsieur, but in such place as gives me the command of all his other servants, and because his grace's pleasure is to give your good his pass through my command, methinks you might use me with more respect.
Cry you mercy. Now you have opened my dull eyes, I see you, and would be glad to see the good you speak of. What might I call your name?
Monsieur Maffe.
Monsieur Maffe, then, good Monsieur Maffe, pray let me know you better.
Pray do so, that you may use me better. For yourself, by your no better outside, I would judge you to be some poet. Have you given my lord some pamphlet?
Pamphlet?
Pamphlet, sir, I say.
Did your great master's goodness leave the good that is to pass your charge to my poor use, to your discretion?
Though he did not, sir, I hope 'tis no rude office to ask reason. How that his grace gives me in charge goes from me.
That's very perfect, sir.
Well, very good, sir. I pray then give me leave. If for no pamphlet, may I not know what other merit in you makes this compunction willing to relieve you?
No merit in the world, sir.
That is strange. You're a poor soldier, are you?
That I am, sir.
And have commanded?
Aye, and gone without, sir.
I see the man. 100 crowns will make him swagger and drink healths to his grace's bounty, and swear that he could not be more bountiful. So there's 900 crowns saved. Here, tall soldier, his grace has sent you a whole 100 crowns.
100, sir. Nay, do his highness right. I know his hand is larger, and perhaps I may deserve more than my outside shows. I am a poet as I am a soldier, and I can poetize, and being well encouraged, may sing his fame for giving, yours for delivering, like a most faithful servant, what he gives.
What shall your subject be?
I care not much if to his bounteous grace I sing the praise of fair great noses, and to you of long ones. What qualities have you, sir, beside your chain and velvet jacket? Can your worship dance?
A pleasant fellow, faith. It seems my lord will have him for his jester, and by our lady, such men are now no fools. 'Tis a knight's place. If I, to save his grace some crowns, should urge him to abate his bounty, I should not be heard. I would to heaven I were an errant ass, for then I should be sure to have the ears of these great men's, where now their jesters have them. 'Tis good to please them. Yet I'll take no notice of his preferment, but in policy will still be grave and serious, lest he think I fear his wooden dagger. Here, Sir Ambo.
How Ambo, sir?
Aye, is your name not Ambo?
You called me lately D'Ambois. Has your worship so short a head?
I cry thee mercy, D'Ambois. 1,000 crowns I bring you from my lord. If you be thrifty, and play the good husband, you may make this a good standing living. 'Tis a bounty. His highness might perhaps have bestowed better.
Oh, you're a rascal. Hence away, rogue.
And strikes him.
What do you mean, sir?
Hence, prate no more, or by the villain's blood thou pratest thy last. A barbarous groom grudge at his master's bounty. But since I know he would as much abhor his hind should argue what he gives his friend, take that, sir, for your aptness to dispute.
Or he strikes him here and exits.
These crowns are set in blood. Blood be their fruit.
And exit Maffe. End of the first scene, we have met Bussy. We have met someone who's going, I can help you in your career and prospects, and I will send someone to give you money. The someone says, I might be able to split the difference with the money here. Say, this is how much he's brought you. Absolutely. And is a bit of an arse and gets a blow for his efforts there. Thoughts from the room on this, Alan?
I think there's a couple of points in which I was looking at it and wondering whether there were spelling errors. And then it's when Maffe is talking about to D'Ambois. And then you called me like the D'Ambois. And I'm just wondering whether you would have a game of him deliberately getting the name wrong.
Or it's a clue as to pronunciation, and it shouldn't be D'Ambois, it should be D'Ambois in pronunciation. There's lots of little textual elements here that aren't sort of clearly elucidated, that there are, say, slight differences between A and B text here. There are some bits that are elucidated further. Also, Maffe sort of needs some... there's lots of moments for a side where it's, talking to the audience, I'm going to swindle this guy, hi, which isn't immediately clear. Lynn, then Aliki.
I'm pretty sure that around this time is French was undergoing a pronunciation shift about the same time as English, and the some of the pronunciations we think of as typically French, like the wa and the nasal things like hadn't actually evolved yet. So it was probably D'Ambois even when this was written. Someone who's a better linguistic historian than I am might want to confirm or deny that, but I'm pretty sure that the wa thing, actually, that's not how that was pronounced at the time. There's that. But there's my feeling from this first is there's something kind of oldie-fashionedy about what the playwright is trying to do here. The blank verse is so regular, although it's there's a lot of enjambment. And Bussy and Monsieur, both Bussy especially, they stand around pontificating, like making these general statements about the nature of society and the nature of the world, and rather than moving the plot along. So I wonder what this text is trying to do. It's actually not very dramatic yet, and that scene was rather long.
Yeah, it's a couple of hundred lines. Aliki, then Sarah, then Eric.
So I'm really enjoying the regularity of the verse, I have to say, but I can't always tell what it's up to. And I'm struggling to see what's really going on. Monsieur, who is the prince, the heir, I guess the brother of the king, has come to the woods to find Bussy to say, oh, we want you back at court because you're so great, right? Or something like that. Or you should be doing good because you're so great. And then his most trusted servant is a scoundrel. So I'm here to trust the judgment of Monsieur that you see as a person. Anyway, so yeah, I'm going to wait and see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, that's things, I want to further your career. Hang on, I will sort out the details later. There is an issue with the corporate structure underneath this particular person. Sarah.
I had the same query as Aliki, really. I don't get why the Monsieur is going to all this trouble over this soldier. We don't really know why. I mean, he did say, I could be king if my brother was dead, but but if that happens, it has to happen naturally. So, it's not like he's plotting, or at least he's not admitting to himself that he's plotting yet. He just wants a guy on his side at court, but like 1,000 crowns and going to all the trouble to go and find him. It seems like a very particular thing to do.
Is he looking to find him? I mean, or is he just stumbling across him? I mean, I'm not sure.
I think he says. Yeah, he says he's come to find him, doesn't he? I'm pretty sure he does.
So if he saw him earlier, he wasn't in a great place. He's going to help him out. Why not? Well, I don't. Where is your charity?
Well, mine is fine, thank you very much. But King's brothers, not so much. It's
why
like
not? Why not?
I don't
barely met him. He seems nice.
There's something, and he's not particularly. He's super grumpy. He's not particularly. I'm just wondering, is he gonna turn out to be some either? Is he going to be like the key to something, or does he have some sort of skill that hasn't been revealed yet? But I'm like, what? There was a lot, like he said, there was a lot of words there, and we still don't really know who he is or why he's been summoned to court or what's going on. And I'm like, wow, that was a lot to tell us not much.
You want a great guy. He's just down on his luck. He wants to be a great man in the world. And it's France. I mean, he's obviously despairing. Eric, then.
Yeah, it felt like it feels like the playwright, aka Chapman, is trying to do like a sort of neoclassical tragedy thing where nobody really talks to each other, but they talk past each other. And like the language is quite, I mean, if you follow it, it's quite okay, but then it gets quite dense when they're doing their monologues and soliloquy things, and it's like, what on earth are you trying to do with yourself, man? It just feels very dense for no reason. Like I get we've had these exchanges between Bussy or Bussy and Maffe or Maffe, which like, okay, he's trying to swindle him and so on and so forth, and it just feels sort of verbose.
Brian, and then Lynn, then we'll move on.
Yeah, a couple of things. First, of course, it's hard not to respond to the verse, as we all have in various ways. It feels like a kind of versification that I haven't seen in the play, and I'm a recent joiner to the group, that I haven't seen in any of the plays we've done recently. Feels old-fashioned by comparison to some of the, city comedy kinds of things we've been looking at. It's hard not to remember that this is the guy who translated the Iliad, and that he is deeply immersed in the classical learning. And so I think one of the things the density is doing, and I too perceive it as density, is trying to raise the tone and make, I think, what we perceive as density, he perceives as gravity and epic weight, is my guess.
Yes, I mean, this is the guy who's, we've only, I think, read comedies. That's literally all we've read for a Chapman. And comedies, by and large, we've sort of quite liked. We've had some issues and questions with them. But this feels like someone who's trying to make a statement about, this is a thing I want to do. It does feel like a neoclassical tragedy in many ways. We'll see about the next scene when we've got a lot more speakers, whether that's something we continue in sort of tone and thought. Brian, before I go to Lynn.
Yeah, still got two more short points. One is that he does. There is a reason given for Monsieur to seek out Bussy. It's cursory, but he says, "I seek him out because he is young and haughty, apt to take fire at advancement, to bear state and flourish. In his rise, therefore, shall my bounties shine." So he's picked up somebody who he thinks will respond well to being given a benefactor. And make the benefactor look good by succeeding. That's how I'd paraphrase that.
Yeah, it seems reasonable to me. Yeah,
that's as much reason as we're given. Finally, I deeply agree that what we've read is so far largely not very dramatic. The one thing we see him do, we see two things happen. We see the Monsieur say, "I'm going to advance this guy," and we see Bussy able to see through the Monsieur's servant and call him out for being dishonest. So those are two things that both, to some degree, put some emphasis on what Bussy starts with in his long monologue that finally gets to a point at the opening speech: virtue. And the question for me is whether we are going to believe that Bussy is indeed virtuous enough to carry us through. It feels like that virtue is going to be the main thing he has to offer in this play. That's the main statement he brings when he comes on stage. And some haughty notion of what this virtue is and how corrupt the people around him will be is what's been set up for us. So it's interesting to see, it will be interesting to see how that plays out, what kind of greatness comes from it, and whether we believe he can be virtuous or is merely haughty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just a note on length. I mean, his opening speech is about 34 lines long. I mean, it might feel long, but it isn't actually very long. And we do also have actions, and there is a physicality going on here. We got throwing at the end of this 34 lines. He throws himself down on the ground. There is some histrionics going on here. So it's striving for a certain kind of effect that we haven't really seen in this milieu. We haven't really seen it in a boys' company play very much, at least not as except as comedy or somewhere in between. Lynn?
Yeah, the whole classical thing, we're all feeling that. Even like Monsieur has this long speech where he lists great men, and they're all from the ancient tradition. There's a Roman, and there's a Greek, and there's a Persian. So, yeah, he's not he's not invoking like the medieval past or the recent past. It's the classical past that Monsieur uses as exemplars. And maybe it's just because I want to defend Maffe. But I don't know that he's corrupt. He's just a douchebag. Because he doesn't say, I wonder if I can get away with giving away part of this money and keeping the rest. He says, I would be a bad servant if I did what my master wants me to do, because this guy doesn't deserve this money. He doesn't say there's 100 for you and 900 for me. He says there's 100 saved. So I think that the friction between them is one of class and status. Is that Bussy is actually a nobleman but doesn't look like one, and Maffe is not. He's a nobleman's servant, but he thinks he's better than Bussy, and so is being really condescending to him, and that really chaps Bussy's hide.
Yes, I mean the condescension's definitely there, regardless of how we read the pronunciation of the name. I still think he's probably slightly corrupt, but then I think there is an element that all servants are a bit corrupt. You know, you're always looking for some kind of an angle to make your life better because it's probably rubbish. It does, so long as he doesn't actively harm his master, that's a slightly different thing. I don't think he's actively, despicable that way, but he is working an angle, potentially. We shall see. Let's get some more data as we go into our next scene, Act 1, Scene 2. Enter. Well, we've got slightly. I'm looking at slightly different variations on text here. We've got the setting of a table, a chessboard, and tapers, which may be revealed from behind a curtain. We have the entrance of Henri, Guise, Montsurry, Eleanor, the Duchess, Tamyra, Beaupre, Pyrhot, lots of people, loads of people, lots of French people enter.
Duchess of Guise, your grace is much enriched in the attendance of that English virgin that will initiate her prime of youth, disposed to court conditions under the hand of your preferred instructions and command, rather than any in the English court, whose ladies are not matched in Christendom for graceful and confirmed behaviours, more than the court where they are bred is equalled.
I like not their court fashion. It is too crestfallen in all observance, making demigods of their great nobles, and of their old queen, an ever young and most immortal goddess.
No question, she's the rarest queen in Europe.
But what's that to her immortality?
I assure you, cousin Guise, so great a courtier, so full of majestic and royal parts, no queen in Christendom may vaunt herself. Her court approves it. That's a court indeed, not mixed with clanneries used in common houses, but as courts should be, the abstracts of their kingdoms, in all the beauty, state, and worth they hold. So is hers, amply and by her informed. The world is not contracted in a man, with more proportion and expression than in her court. Her kingdom, our French court, is a mere mirror of confusion to it. The king and subject, lord and every slave, dance a continual hay. Our rooms of state, kept like our stables, no place more observed than a rude marketplace. And though our custom keep this assured confusion from our eyes, it is nevertheless essentially unsightly, which they would soon see, would they change their form to this of ours, and then compare them both, which we must not affect, because in kingdoms where the king's change doth breed the subject's terror, pure innovation is more gross than error.
No question, we shall see them imitate, though afar off, the fashions of our courts, as they have ever aped us in attire. Never were men so weary of their skins, and apt to leap out of themselves as they, who, when they travel to bring forth rare men, come home delivered of a fine fresh suit. Their brains lie with their tailors, and get babies for their most complete issue. He's sole heir to all the moral virtues that first greets the light with a new fashion, which becomes them like apes disfigured with the attires of men.
No question, they much wrong their real worth in affectation of outlandish scum. They have faults, and we more. They, foolish proud, to jet in others' plumes so haughtily, we proud that they are so proud of foolery, holding our worths more complete for their vaunts.
Enter Monsieur and Bussy D'Ambois, in. He's probably dressed up a bit now because he's had some money.
Come, mine own sweetheart, I will enter thee. Sir, I have brought a gentleman to the court, and pray, you would vouchsafe to him grace.
D'Ambois, I think.
That's
still my name, my lord, though I be something altered in attire.
We like your alteration, I must tell you. We have expected the offer of your service, but we, in fear to make mild virtue proud, use not to seek her out in any man.
Nor doth she use to seek out any man. He that will win must woo her, if she's not shameless.
I urged her modesty in him, my lord, and gave her those rights that he says she merits.
If you have wooed and won, then, brother, wear him.
Thou'rt mine, sweetheart. See, here's the guy, the Guise's Duchess, the Countess Montsurry, Beaupre. Come, I'll enseam thee. Ladies, you are too many to be in council. I have here a friend that I would gladly enter in your graces.
Save your ladies.
If you enter him in our graces, my lord, methinks by his blunt behaviour he should come out of himself.
Tamyra? Lynn?
Muted, of course. Has he never been courtier, my lord?
Never, my lady.
Why did the toy take him in the head now?
'Tis leap year, lady, and therefore very good to enter a courtier.
Mark, Duchess of Guise, there is one not bashful.
No, my lord, he is much guilty of the bold extremity.
The man's a courtier at first sight.
I can sing prick song, lady, at first sight, and why not be a courtier as suddenly?
Is a courtier rotten before he be ripe?
Think me not impudent, lady. I am yet no courtier. I desire to be one, and would gladly take entrance, madam, under your princely colours.
Enter Barrisor, Lynn, and Pyrhot. Some people may be talking. Close to themselves is a different character.
Soft, sir, you must rise by degrees, being first the servant of some common lady or knight's wife, then a little higher to a lord's wife, next a little higher to a countess, yet a little higher to a duchess, and then turn the ladder.
Do you allow a man, then, 4 mistresses, when the greatest mistress is allowed but 3 servants?
Where find you that statute, sir?
Why, be judged by the groom porters.
Groom porters?
Aye, madam. Must not they judge all the gamings in the court?
You talk like a gamester.
Sir, know you me?
My lord.
I know not you. Whom do you serve?
Serve, my lord.
Go to, companion, your courtship's too saucy.
Saucy? Companion? 'Tis the Guise, but yet those terms might have been spared of the gizzard. Companion? He's jealous by this light. Are you blind of that side, Duke? I'll to her again for that. 4th princely mistress, for the honour of courtship, another riddle.
Cease your courtship, or by heaven, I'll cut your throat.
Cut my throat? Cut a whetstone, young Axius Novius. Do as much with your tongue as he did with a razor. Cut my throat.
What new-come gallant have we here that dares make the Guise thus?
But 'tis D'Ambois. The Duke mistakes him, on my life, for some knight of the new edition.
Cut my throat. I would the king feared thy cutting of his throat no more than I fear thy cutting of mine.
I'll do it by this hand.
That hand dares not do it. You've cut too many throats already, Guise, and robbed the realm of many thousand souls more precious than thine own. Come, madam, talk on. Sfoot, can you not talk? Talk on, I say, another riddle.
Here's some strange distemper.
Here's a sudden transmigration with D'Ambois out of the knight's ward into the Duchess' bed.
See what a metamorphosis a brave suit can work.
Slight step to the Guise and discover him.
By no means. Let the new suit work. We'll see the issue.
Leave your courting.
I will not. I say, mistress, and I will stand unto it, that if a woman may have 3 servants, a man may have 60 mistresses.
Sarah, I'll have you whipped out of the court for this insolence.
Whipped! Such another syllable out of the presence, if thou darest, for thy kingdom.
Remember, poltroon.
Pray thee, forbear.
Fortune of death, were not the king here, he should strow the chamber like a rush.
But leave courting his wife then.
I will not. I'll court her in despite of him. Not court her. Come, madam, talk on, fear me nothing. Well mayest thou drive thy master from the court, but never d'Amboise.
His great heart will not down, 'tis like the sea, that partly by his own internal heat, partly the stars' daily and nightly motion, their heat and light, and partly of the place of the diverse frames, but chiefly of the moon, bristled with surges, never will be one. No, not when the hearts of all those powers are burst, to make retreat into his settled home, till he be crowned with his own quiet foam.
You have the mate. Another?
No more.
There's a short flourish, exit the Guise, after him the king, and Monsieur whispering.
Here's the lion scared with the throat of a dung-filled cock. Fellow that has newly shaked off his shackles. Now does he crow for that victory.
'Tis one of the best jigs that ever was acted.
Whom does Guise suppose him to be, Trow?
Out of doubt, some new denizen lord, and thinks that suit newly drawn out of the mercer's books.
I've heard of a fellow that by a fixed imagination, looking upon a bull baiting, a visible pair of horns grew out of his forehead. I believe this gallant, overjoyed with the conceit of Monsieur's cast suit, imagines himself to be the Monsieur.
And why not? As well as the ass stalking in the lion's case, bear himself like a lion, braying all the huger beasts out of the forest.
Peace, he looks this way.
Marry, let him look, sir. What will you say now if the Guise is be gone to fetch a blanket for him?
Faith, I believe it, for his honour's sake.
But if d'Ambois carried clean?
Exeunt the ladies.
True, when he covets in the blanket.
I marry, sir.
But see how he stares on us.
God bless us, let's away.
Now, sir, take your full view. Who does the object please ye?
You ask my opinion, sir. I think your suit sits as well as if been made for you.
So, sir, and was that the subject of your ridiculous jollity?
What's that to you, sir?
Sir, I have observed all your fleerings, and resolve yourselves ye shall give a strict account for it.
Enter Brisac and Melynell.
Miraculous jealousy. You think yourself such a singular subject for laughter, that none can fall into the matter of our merriment but you?
This jealousy of yours, sir, confesses some close defect in yourself that we never dreamed of.
We held discourse of a perfumed ass, that being disguised in a lion's case, imagined himself a lion. I hope that touched on you.
So, sir, your descants do marvellous well fit this ground. We shall meet where your buffoonly laughters will cost ye the best blood in your bodies.
Oh, for life's sake, let's be gone. He'll kill us outright, else.
Go at your pleasures. I'll be your ghost to haunt you, and you sleep on it, hang me.
Go, sir, go. Court your mistress.
And be advised, we shall have odds against you.
Tush, valor stands not in number. I'll maintain it that one man may beat 3 boys.
Nay, you shall have no odds of him in number, sir. He's a gentleman as good as the proudest of you, and ye shall not wrong him.
Not, sir?
Sir, though he be not so rich, he's a better man than the best of you, and I will not endure it.
Not you, sir.
No, aye, sir.
I should thank you for this kindness, if I thought these perfumed muskcats, being out of this privilege, durst but once mew at us.
Does your confident spirit doubt that, sir? Follow us and try.
Come, sir, we'll lead you a dance.
And they exit. So this is, once again, this is a scene where there's physical action going on here. There's stuff going on. There's potentially a lot of movement. There's a chess match going on. There's generally, shall we say, a clash of cultures. Or we could say that Bussy's being a bit of a. Is it me? Is he just being a bit of an arsehole, frankly? I mean, they're all sort of, because they are ganging up against him as well, but also he's not really playing the game. So is this his sort of great soldierliness thing in a court setting where everybody's terribly foo-foo? Sort of colliding with each other. It's interesting because I think this scene is very hard to decode without seeing it. Actually, I think the text is really not actually very helpful because you have so many different people talking, and most of you are playing two people in the same scene, and so the words coming out, especially to anyone watching this video, is just going who, the word, would he, and we can see the names in front of us, and we can't even remember who we are. Lynn.
Yeah, and it's maybe worth mentioning that the Guise family was extremely powerful. The Duke of Guise was probably the most powerful man in France, except the king, and that's only maybe except the king.
Yeah.
So flirting with the wife of the most powerful man in France, or one of the two most powerful men, like, that's just dumb.
Yeah.
Like, what?
Yeah, and it's like I am allowed to do all the things, and yeah, no sort of thinking about it. Yeah, and I would argue very strongly he is the most powerful man in France. I mean, the king is actually, I'm not even the king's the second. There's all sorts of other factions who've actually got a lot more practical power, I think, than the king has at this particular point in history. I'll come to that point again in a moment. Alίκη, then Brian.
So once again, here we have a scene in which our hero, our protagonist at least, offers violence pretty much as soon as he is crossed. Yeah, I think, okay, so a whole bunch of people are interacting with him, like, bringing the new kid into a primary school class. And then it's recess. Everybody's coming up to him and going, oh, what are you about then? Oh, you're cute. Or... you don't look like you fit those fancy clothes, or whatever they're saying. But he's certainly, virtue is not the word that springs to my mind about his behavior.
No, I mean, maybe there's something when we're talking about virtue, we're talking something very absolute about this man. That means that he's not really there to compromise or quietly not say what he really shouldn't say in this context. Brian.
Yeah, I think this follows along the same thing we're all saying. I'm going to go back to one speech from this. It's from Monsieur, who at least, is trying to be a D'Ambois fan. He says, his great heart will not down, 'tis like the sea, that partly by his own internal... That speech attributes to D'Ambois a greatness that is elemental and like the planets and like the ocean. And I'm not sure I believe that about him yet. I mean, the main thing we see about him is that when he's spurred on, he turns hot quite quickly. And that seems to be his primary characteristic. And whether that's going to amount to virtue and greatness, I have yet to be convinced.
Yeah, and yeah, because the play's telling us he's great, but we're not really seeing that. I'm going to have to keep everyone relatively brief. But Alίκη, then Eric, then Lynn.
It just very quickly occurred to me, having said that maybe Chapman the classicist is using an ancient idea of virtue, which is about being yourself as much as possible, and virtue, manliness. So maybe his aggression is part of his virtue.
Honor, maintaining honor.
And maybe that's why they brought him to court, was to teach these court people to all that compromise and discussion you're having, when what we really need are these kind of virtues. Discuss. Eric, then Lynn.
Yeah, I'm just wondering why would you bring him to court just like entertainment? Because it seems like that kind of sort of like it's kind of that thing of let's bring this weirdo to, well, I mean weirdo as in like sort of not someone like us to court to see how he will behave in our context, like when he's not on his own turf, because we've been told he's a soldier. And we've been told he doesn't love advancement. So it means that basically he hates his superiors. And anyone who tries to be like overly polite, if I'm not mistaken, and tells him what to do, he would do the opposite, which is basically like what he's doing. So yeah, I'm sort of curious as to how this is going to lead to a tragedy that I don't think anyone's going to be sad for him.
You're assuming that he's not going to survive. Okay, Lynn.
Yeah, I think Alίκη had a really good point that not only have values shifted since 1600, that Chapman is reaching back to a classical system of values where bluntness and bravery, virtue, valor is the chiefest virtue, rather than good-heartedness or intelligence or anything that we tend to admire today. So, I mean, I think the play's failure to persuade us that he's a great man and not just a man with anger management problems might just be that this play's message is a victim of time, rather than do something more complex.
Yeah, there's always a bit of a problem with any plays from this period, regardless of country. Actually, there's quite a few from Spain and etc. where there's these various concepts of honor are thrown out, and you're sitting there going, "Really? I'm not even sure the Klingons would buy that." Anyway, so we need to move on. But one thing I do want to just briefly say about that scene: the opening of the scene has a twofold function, which I quite like. One, it tells you what approximately what year it's set, because of course they're talking about the early years of the Queen Elizabeth. So we know who's literally just died when this play has come out a year or so before. But also it spends about 5 minutes insulting the English, which I'm sure the audience would absolutely, it's actually a very fun opening. I know it looks quite, but if you actually have this whole thing of these fashions coming over from there, and you can have a lot of fun with that. So there is an interesting dynamic coming in with that. Okay, Act 2, Scene 1. Assuming for the original production that we probably had a mini interval to trim candles or maybe a bit of music, but later on they probably didn't bother. Act 2, Scene 1. Enter Henri, Guise, Montsurry, and attendants.
This desperate quarrel sprung out of their envies to D'Ambois' sudden bravery and great spirit.
Neither is worth their envy.
Less than either will make the gall of envy overflow. He feeds on outcast entrails like a kite, in which foul heap, if any ill lies hid, she sticks her beak into it, shakes it up, and hurls it all aboard, that all may view it. Corruption is her nutriment, but touch her with any precious ointment, and you kill her. Where she finds any filth in men, she feasts, and with her black throat roots it through the world, being sound and healthful. But if she but taste the slender and pittance of commended virtue, she surfeits of it, and is like a fly that passes all the body's soundest parts, and dwells upon the sores. Or, if her squint eye have power to find none there, she forges some, she makes that crooked ever which is straight, valour, giddiness, justice, tyranny. A wise man may shun her, she, not herself. Whithersoever she flies from her harms, she bears a foe still clasped in her own arms. And therefore, cousin Guise, let us avoid her.
Enter Nuncius.
What Atlas or Olympus lifts his head so far past covert, that with air enough my words may be informed, and from their height I may be seen and heard through all the world? A tale so worthy and so fraught with wonder sticks in my jaws and labours with event.
Comes thou from D'Ambois?
from him and the rest, his friends and enemies, whose stern fight I saw, and heard their words before, and in the fray.
Relate at large what thou hast seen and heard.
I saw fierce D'Ambois and his 2 brave friends enter the field, and at their heels their foes, which were the famous soldiers Barrisor, Lanou, and Pyrhot, great in deeds of arms, all which arrived at the evenest piece of earth field afforded. The 3 challengers turned head, drew all their rapiers, and stood ranked, when face to face the 3 defendants met them, alike prepared and resolute alike, like bonfires of contributory wood. Every man's look showed, fed with either's spirit, as one had been a mirror to another, like forms of life and death, each took from other, and so were life and death, mixed at their heights, that you could see no fear of death for life, nor love of life for death. But in their brows Pyrrhot's opinion in great letters shone, that life and death in all respects are one.
Asked there no sort of words at their encounter?
As Hector twixt the hosts of Greece and Troy, when Paris and the Spartan king should end the 9 years' war, held up his brazen lance for signal that both hosts should cease from arms and hear him speak, so Barrisor, advanced his naked rapier twixt both sides, ripped up the quarrel, and compared 6 lives, then laid in balance, with 6 idle words, offered remission and contrition too, or else that he and D'Ambois might conclude the other's dangers. D'Ambois liked the last, but Barrisor's friends, being equally engaged in the main quarrel, never would expose his life alone to that they all deserved. And for the other offer of remission, D'Ambois, that like a laurel put in fire, sparkled and spit, did much more than scorn that his wrong should incense him so, like chaff, to go so soon out, and like lighted paper approve his spirit at once both fire and ashes. So drew they lots, and in them fates appointed that Barrisor should fight with fiery D'Ambois, Pyrhot with Melynell, with Brisac Lanou, and then, like flame and powder, they commixed so sprightly that I wish they had been spirits, that the ne'er shutting wounds that they needs must open might, as they opened, shut, and never kill. But D'Ambois' sword, that lightened as it flew, shot like a pointed comet at the face of manly Barrisor, and there it stuck. Thrice plucked he at it, and thrice drew on thrusts from him that of himself was free as fire, who thrust still as he plucked, yet past belief, he with his subtle eye, hand, body, escaped. At last the deadly bidden point tugged off. On fell his yet undaunted foe so fiercely that, only made more horrid with his wound, great D'Ambois shrunk and gave a little ground, but soon returned, redoubled in his danger, and at the heart of Barrisor sealed his anger. Then, as in Arden I have seen an oak long shook with tempests, and his lofty top bent to his root, which, being at length made loose, even groaning with his weight, he 'gan to nod this way and that, as loath his curled brows, which he had often wrapped in the sky with storms, should stoop, and yet his radical fibers burst, storm-like he fell, and hid the fear-cold earth. So fell stout Barrisor, that had stood the shocks of 10 set battles in your highness war, 'gainst the sole soldier of the world, Navarre.
Oh, piteous and horrid murder!
Such a life, methinks, had metal in it to survive an age of men.
Such often soonest end. Thy felt report calls on. We long to know on what events the other have arrived.
Sorrow and fury, like 2 opposite fumes, met in the upper region of a cloud, at the report made by this worthy's fall, break from the earth, and with them rose revenge, entering with fresh powers his 2 noble friends, and under that odds fell surcharged Brisac, the friend of D'Ambois, before fierce Lanou, which D'Ambois seeing, as I once did see in my young travels through Armenia, an angry unicorn in his full career charge with too swift a foot, a jeweler that watched him for the treasure of his brow, and ere he could get shelter of a tree, nail him with his rich antler to the earth. So D'Ambois ran upon revenged Lanu, who, eyeing the eager point borne in his face and giving back, fell back, and in his fall, his foe's uncurbed sword stopped in his heart, by which time all the life strings of the t'other were cut, and both fell as their spirit flew upwards, and still hunt honor at the view. And now all the six, sole D'Ambois stood untouched, save only with the other's blood.
Slain outright?
All slain outright, but he who, kneeling in the warm life of his friends, all freckled with the blood his rapier rained, he kissed their pale lips and bade both farewell. And see the bravest man the French earth bears.
Enter Nuncius, exit Nuncius rather. Enter Monsieur and D'Ambois bear. Bussy, you are muted. Your bravery cannot be heard.
Now is the time. Your princely vowed, my friend. Perform it princely, and obtain my pardon.
Else heaven forgive not me. Come on, brave friend. If ever nature held herself her own, when the great trial of a king and subject met in one blood, both from one belly springing, now prove her virtue and her greatness one, or make the t'other one the greater with the t'other, as true kings should. And for your brother's love, which is a special species of true virtue, do that you could not do, not being a king.
Rather, I know your suit. These wilful murthers are ever past our pardon.
Manly slaughter should never be the account of wilful murther, it being a spice of justice where the life offending.
Oh, did we just lose our?
Nope, she had a phone ring.
Ah, right.
Yeah, sorry. It's going to be a noisy. My apologies.
I don't know where we were.
Manly slaughter should never be the account of wilful murther, it being a spice of justice, where with life offending past the equal life is laid in balance, to scourge the offense, but by law of reputation, which to men exceeds all positive law, and what that leaves to true men's valors, not prefixing rights or satisfaction suited to their wrongs, a free man's eminence may supply and take.
This would make every man that thinks him wronged, or is offended, or in wrong or right, lay on this violence, and all vaunt themselves law-menders and suppliers, though mere butchers, should this fact, though of justice, be forgiven.
Oh no, my lord, it would make cowards fear to touch the reputations of true men, when only they are left to imp the law. Justice will soon distinguish murderous minds from just revengers. Had my friend been slain, his enemy surviving, he should die, since he had added to a murthered fame, which was his intent, a murthered man. And this had worthily been wilful murther. But my friend only saved his fame's dear life, which is above life, taking thunder value, which in the wrong it did was forfeit to him, and in this fact only preserves a man in his uprightness, worthy to survive, millions of such as murther men alive.
Well, brother, raise your friend withal, from death to life, and, D'Ambois, let your life, refined by passing through this merited death, be purged from more such foul pollution, nor on your scape, nor valour, more presuming to begin so violent.
My lord, I loathe as much a deed of unjust death as law itself doth, and to tyrannize, because I have a little spirit to dare and power to do so, as to be tyrannized. This is a grace that on my knees redoubled I crave, to double this my short life's gift, and shall your royal bounty centuple, that I may so make good what law and nature hath given me for my good. Since I am free, offending no just law, let no law make, by any wrong it does, my life her slave. When I am wronged, and that law fails to right me, let me be king myself, as man was made, and do a justice that exceeds the law. If my wrong pass the power of single valor to right and expiate, then be you my king, and do a right exceeding law and nature, who to himself is law, no law doth need, offends no law, and is a king indeed.
Enjoy what thou entreatest, we give but ours.
What you have given, my lord, is ever yours.
And exit the king with Montsurry.
Mon Dieu! Who would have pardoned such a murder?
Exit Guise.
Now vanish horrors into court attractions, for which let this balm make thee fresh and fair. And now forth with thy service to the Duchess, as my long love will to Monsieur's countess.
And exit Monsieur.
To whom my love hath long been vowed in heart, although in hand for show I held the Duchess. And now, through blood and vengeance, deeds of height and hard to be achieved, 'tis fit I make attempt of her perfection. I need fear no check in his rivality, since her virtues are so renowned, and he of all dames hated.
And exit Bussy. Okay, so much here that I find fascinating. I mean, it's very Dido. I'm prepping Dido, Queen of Carthage at the moment, and basically Act 2 is it's story hour, and it's obviously very neoclassical, and Nuncius comes on and tells of this thing that happened off stage. I'm assuming boys' companies just didn't do the fight choreography in the way that adult companies did. This is why you just have story hour rather than let's have a fight. I'm obviously suggesting for a modern production, while the story is being told, we get the 80s fight sequence because come on, all at once or one at a time, probably one at a time because that's how 80s movies work. And it's got fascinating potential. And I was quite riveted by the Nuncius's speech. I mean, there's a lot of it, but it's got some interesting stuff. I'm going to declare an interest in this on a totally different level, which is this is almost the Admirable Crichton. The original Admirable Crichton was a guy who fought a duel with 6 people simultaneously, and he killed 5. No relation, by the way. But he was constantly lauded as being this great figure and being literally admirable. That's where the phrase comes from. J.M. Barrie stole it. He was a real person, and this suddenly just leapt out at me, just going, I know this story. I'm assuming it's a pure coincidence. But so obviously I'm now very biased. So I'll step back. It's fine. But anyway, you can ignore that point. It's utterly irrelevant to everything that's going on here. Aliki, then other people.
Okay, we've said this before, but this is very classical. The messenger comes in and tells you all of the action. And the reason that it's an engaging speech in a way that some of the others haven't, or it's a more immediate speech, is that it's not talking about abstractions. It's actually describing real things that happened. Sure, I mean, he goes off into like 5 or 6 line metaphors, but to describe real things, not I said it already.
Yeah. And of course you get to the payoff, which is of course the King goes, yeah, it's fine. It was a fair fight. It's okay. And Guise, I'm sort of going with the Guise of going, what just happened? And I think that's great. Eric, then Rachel.
I think Brian also wanted to say something.
No, that's fine. After Rachel.
Yeah, we'll dance around a little bit.
I think this is basically like sort of the first incarnation of Lord Flashheart. He turns up trying to charm every woman in sight, and then specifically the highest ranked woman in sight, and then sort of the fights off everyone, but he's not as charming or polite or as we like as he was in Blackadder.
Rachel. Then Lynn.
Yeah, I think Nuncio's speech works so well, partly because we've just met all the characters who've gone off stage, and then I assume they're going to be somewhere visible in a performance so you can watch them fight each other. But I think it works so well because we've just met them all and they've just gone off stage and we somehow invested in them and not sure what their, dynamics are, but it plays out for us. I like it.
Lynn, I think, and then
oh sure, I'll go. So I'm interested in this speech that Bussy has about the law. I can't follow it. I mean, I think maybe this is kind of a bullshit argument, but I wonder if this play might be about someone who just hasn't kept up with the times. He lives in a past where individual valor mattered, that the law was it's a concept, but it doesn't really run our lives. And in the early modern period, law and the idea of law being this sort of universal, that's the trump card, that's the ace, is that even the king is subject to law. That's an idea that's already starting to circulate, and that's not the world that Bussy lives in. So I mean, he's a man of a past time, and he's never gonna fit in. Is kind of what I don't know. That's what this play is turning out to be about now. I don't know if that's what Chapman was thinking. I had something else, but I've forgotten it.
Alan.
Yeah, I must admit, I had to do a rather quick reassessment of the courtly characters who we met in the previous scene, because I was visualizing from the way they were coming across as being effete courtiers who basically wouldn't know one end of a sword from the other. And yet then we get this description of how they're all up for the fight. And I think that's one that will be interesting to explore with costume choices and so on, if one was putting on a production of this.
Yes, I mean, this is the 1570s. They're all going to know how to fight. I mean, that's the thing. They can also be incredibly, elaborate in their display, but they're carrying pucker weapons. Brian, sorry, very late in the day.
Oh, that's fine. I'm still pursuing what notion of virtue it is that this character represents, and I think for the first time it begins to have some. I can begin to see what its attractions are supposed to be, and one is the valor in the fight, clearly, and the other is the speech about who to himself is law, his ability to assert his own integrity over that of the law if necessary. Which I agree with Lynn is not necessarily really genuinely morally a great argument, but I can see the attraction. It feels like something from a Western, maybe. I wanted to say too, I agree with Aliki that the Nuncius speeches are much more interesting than I expected, than Nuncius speeches usually are. And it wasn't just Aliki's marvelous reading of it, although I certainly appreciated the enthusiasm, and that added to it a great deal. It really is marvelous. The image of the laurel bough sparking as a figure of Bussy's temperament seems just perfect. And I can't help but think at this point that Chapman writes narrative much better than he writes dialogue.
Ooh, there's a thought. There's a thought. Okay. Well, maybe he's been doing a lot of it recently. So he's in the swing. Okay. We have one more scene to do. And we're going to do it now. It's a fairly chunky one. Act 2, Scene 2. Enter Montsurry, Tamyra, Beaupre, Pyrhot, Charlotte, Pyrrha, etc.
You will have pardon, sure.
Poor pity else, for though his great spirit something overflow, all faults are born still that from greatness grow. but such a sudden courtier saw I never.
He was too sudden, which indeed was rudeness.
True, for it argued his no due conceit, both of the place and greatness of the persons, nor of our sex, all which, we all being strangers to his encounter, should have made more manners, deserve more welcome.
All this fault is found because he loved the Duchess and left you.
Alas, love give her joy. I am so far from envy of her honor that I swear, had he encountered me with such proud slight, I would have put that project face of his to a more test than did her duchessship.
Why, by your leave, my lord, I'll speak it here, although she be my aunt. She scarce was modest when she perceived the Duke, her husband, take those late exceptions to her servant's courtship to entertain him.
Aye, and stand him still, letting her husband give her servant place, though he did manly. He should be a woman. She should be a woman.
Enter Guise.
Ardent. King, where law? See how it runs, much like a turbulent sea, here high and glorious as it did content to wash the heavens and make the stars more pure, and here so low it leaves the mud of hell to every common view. Come, Count Montsurry, we must consult of this.
Stay not, sweet lord.
Be pleased, I'll straight return.
Exit Montsurry with Guise.
Would that would please me.
I'll leave you, madam, to your passions. I see there's change of weather in your looks.
Beaupre exits with Charlotte and Pyrhot.
I cannot cloak it, but as when a fume hot, dry, and gross within the womb of earth or in the superficies begot, when extreme cold hath stroke it to the heart, the more it is compressed, the more it rageth, exceeds his prison strength that should contain it, and then it tosseth temples in the air, all bars made engines to his insolent fury. So, of a sudden, my licentious fancy riots within me. Not my name and house, nor my religion, to this hour observed, can stand above it. I must utter that will bring in parting, break more strings in me than death when life parts. And that holy man, that from my cradle counsel for my soul, I must make an agent for my blood.
Enter Monsieur.
Is my mistress gracious?
Yet unanswered?
Pray thee, regard thine own good, if not mine, and cheer my love for that. You do not know what you may be by me, nor what without me. I may have power to advance and pull down any.
That's not my study. One way I am sure you shall not put me down. My husband's height is crown to all my hopes, and his retiring to any mean state shall be my aspiring. My honor's in mine own hands, spite of kings.
Honor? What's that? Your second maidenhead? And what is that? A word. The word is gone, the thing remains. The rose is plucked, the stalk abides. An easy loss where no lack's found. Believe it, there's a small lack in the loss, and there is pain in the losing. Archers ever have two strings in a bow, and shall great Cupid, archer of archers both in men and women, be worse provided than a common archer? A husband and a friend all wise wives have.
Wise wives they are that on such strings depend, with a firm husband joining a loose friend.
Still you stand on your husband. So do all the common sex of you when you are encountered with one ye cannot fancy. All men know you live in court here by your own election, frequenting all your common sports and triumphs, all the most youthful company of men. And wherefore do you this? To please your husband? 'Tis gross and fulsome, if your husband's pleasure be your object, and you aim at honor in living close to him, get you from court. You may have him at home. These common put-offs for common women serve my honor, husband. Dames meritorious ne'er were meritorious. Speak plain and say, I do not like you, sir. You're an ill-favored fellow in my eye. And I am answered.
Then pray be answered, for in good faith, my lord, I do not like you in that sort you like.
Then have at you here. Take with a politic hand this rope of pearl, and though you be not amorous, yet be wise. Take me for wisdom, that you can have. He that you can love is ne'er the further from you.
Now it comes so ill prepared that I may take a poison under a medicine as good cheap as it. I will not have it were it worth the world.
Horror of death! Could I but please your eye, you would give me the like, ere you would lose me. Honor and husband.
By this light, my lord, you're a vile fellow, and I'll tell the king your occupation of dishonoring ladies of his court. A lady cannot live as she was born, and with that sort of pleasure that fits her state, but she must be defamed with an infamous lord's detraction. Who would endure the court if these attempts of open and professed lust must be borne? Who's there? Come on, dame, you are at your book when men are at your mistress. Have I taught you any such waiting woman's quality?
Farewell, good husband.
Exit Monsieur.
Farewell, wicked lord.
Enter Montsurry.
The Monsieur here.
Yes, to good purpose, and your cause is as good to seek him too, and haunt his company.
Why? What's the matter?
Matter of death. Were I some husband's wife, I cannot live at quiet in my chamber for opportunity almost to rapes offered by me by him.
Pray thee, bear with him. Thou knowest he is a bachelor and a courtier, I and a prince, and their prerogatives are to their laws, as to their pardons are their reservations after parliaments. One quits another, form gives all their essence, that prince doth high in virtue's reckoning stand, that will entreat of vice and not command. That so far bear with him. Should another man trust to his privilege, he should trust to death. Take comfort then, my comfort. Nay, triumph and crown thyself, thou partest with victory. My presence is only so dear to thee that other men's appear worse than they be. For this night yet, bear with my forced absence. Thou knowest my business, and with how much weight my vow hath charged it.
True, my lord, and never my fruitless love shall let your serious honor. Yet, sweet lord, do not stay. You know my soul is so long time without me, and I am dead as you are absent.
By this kiss, receive my soul for hostage till I see my love.
The morn shall let me see you.
With the sun I'll visit thy more comfortable beauties.
This is my comfort, that the sun hath left the whole world's beauty ere my son leaves me.
'Tis late night now, indeed. Farewell, my light.
And exit Montsurry.
Farewell, my light, my life. Not in him. In mine own dark love and light bent to another. Alas, that in the wane of our affections we should supply it with a full dissembling, in which each youngest maid is grown a mother. Frailty is fruitful, one sin gets another. Our love, like sparkles, are that brightest shine when they go out. Most vice shows most divine. Go, maid, to bed. Lend me your book, I pray. Not like yourself, for form. I'll this night trouble none of your services. Make sure the doors, and call your other fellows to their rest.
I will. Yet I will watch to know why you watch.
Exit Pyrhot.
Now all ye peaceful regions of the night, silently gliding exhalations, languishing winds and murmuring falls, waters, sadness of heart and ominous secureness, enchantments, deep sleep, all the friends of rest that ever wrought upon the life of man, extend your utmost strength of this charmed hour, fix like the center, make the violent wheels of time and fortune stand, and great existence, the maker's treasury, now not seem to be to all but my approaching friends and me. They come, alas, they come, fear and hope. For one thing, at one instant, fight in me. I love what most I loathe, and cannot live unless I compass that which holds my death. for men's mere death, loving one that loathes me, and he I love will loathe me when he sees I fly my sex, my virtue, my renown, to run so madly to a man unknown.
The vault opens.
See, a vault is opening that was never known to my lord and husband, nor to any but him that brings me, him that brings the man I love and me. How shall I look on him? How shall I live and not consume in blushes? I will in and cast myself off as ne'er had been.
Exit Tamyra. Friar and D'Ambois ascend.
Worthiest son, I am past measure glad that you, whose worth I have approved so long, should be the object of her fearful love, since both your wit and spirit can adapt their full force to supply her utmost weakness. You know her worths and virtues, for report of all that know is to a man a knowledge. You know besides that our affections, storm, raised in our blood, no reason can reform. Though she seek then their satisfaction, which she must needs, or rest unsatisfied, your judgment will esteem her peace thus wrought nothing less dear than if yourself have sought. And with another colour, which my art shall teach you to lay on, yourself must seem the only agent, and the first orb move in this our set and cunning world of love.
Give me the colour, my most honoured father, and trust my cunning then to lay it on.
'Tis this, good son. Lord Barrisor, whom you slew, did love her dearly, and with all fit means hath urged his acceptation of all which she keeps one letter written in his blood. You must say thus, then, that you heard from me how much herself was touched in conscience with a report, which is in truth dispersed, that your main quarrel grew about her love. Lord Barrisor, imagining your courtship of the great Guise's Duchess in the presence was by you made to his elected mistress, and so made me your mean now to resolve her, choosing by my direction this night's step for the more clear avoiding of all note of your presumed presence, and with this to clear her hands of such a lover's blood, she will so kindly thank and entertain you, methinks I see how, aye, and 10-to-1 show you the confirmation in his blood, lest you should think report, and she did feign, that you shall so have circumstantial means to come to the direct, which must be used, for the direct is crooked. Love comes flying, the height of love is still one with denying.
Thanks, honoured father.
She must never know that you know anything of any love sustained on her part, for learn this of me, if anything a woman does alone, in anything a woman does alone, if she dissemble, she thinks it not done. If not dissemble, nor a little chide, give her wish, she is not satisfied. To have a man think that she never seeks does her more good than to have all she likes. This frailty sticks in them beyond their sex, which to reform a reason is to perplex. Urge reason to them, it will do no good. Humor, that is the chariot of our food in everybody, must in them be fed to carry their affections by it bred. Stand close.
Enter Tamyra with a book.
Alas, I fear my strangeness will retire him. If he go back, I die. I must prevent it and cheer his onset with my sight at least. And that's the most, though every step he takes goes to my heart. I'd rather die than seem not to be strange. To that I most esteem.
Madam! Huh? You will pardon me, I hope, that so beyond your expectation, and at a time for visit and so unfit, I, with my noble friend here, visit you. You know that my access at any time hath ever been admitted, and that friend that my care will presume to bring with me shall have all circumstance of worth in him to merit as free welcome as myself.
Oh, father, but at this suspicious hour, you know how apt best men are to suspect us in any cause that makes suspicious shadow no greater than the shadow of a hair, and you're to blame. What thought my lord and husband lie forth tonight? Why, though my lord and husband lie forth tonight, and since I cannot sleep when he is absent, I sit up tonight, though all the doors are sure, and all our servants as sure bound with their sleeps, yet there is one that wakes above, whose eye no sleep can bind. He sees through the doors and darkness and our thoughts, and therefore, as we should avoid with fear to think amiss ourselves before his search, so should we be as curious to shun all cause that other think no ill of us.
Madam, 'tis far from that. I only heard by this my honored father that your conscience made some deep scruple with a false report that Barrisor's blood should something touch your honor, since he imagined I was courting you when I was bold to change words with the Duchess, and therefore made his quarrel. His long love and service, as I hear, being deeply vowed to your perfections, which my ready presence, presumed on with my father at this season for the more care of your so curious honor, can well resolve your conscience is most false.
And is it therefore that you come, good sir? Then crave I now your pardon and my father's, and swear your presence does me so much good that all I have it binds to your requital. Indeed, sir, 'tis most true that a report is spread, alleging that his love to me was reason of your quarrel, and because you cannot think I feign it for my glory, that he importuned me for his court service, I'll show you his hand set down in blood to that vain purpose. Good sir, then, come in. Father, I thank you now 1,000-fold.
Exit Tamyra and D'Ambois.
May it be worth it to you, honored daughter.
And the friar presumably descends back into the trap via the tradesman exit. End of Act 2, interval. And yeah, it's using, again, very like Dido here, it's using that interval break for two people to go off stage and have some fun times, presumably. So once again, we have a trapdoor in someone's private chambers. Not explicitly the bedchamber, it's probably the sort of external, the exterior room leading off towards it. But yeah, it's there, but the husband doesn't know it's there. In the same way as in so many other plays, that the wife seems to have put in a trapdoor for reasons. But it's the early modern period. I think everyone probably would want to have a trapdoor available in most households. Yeah, we have a different hair has been started here with this character who's been on stage but hasn't really been very central. It looks like the flirting with the Guise's wife was more of a sort of an amuse-bouche for a separate flirtation, and things may be going down, as it were. Alan?
Just wondering whether the playhouse concerned had recently had a trapdoor installed, and it was a bit of a novelty, and therefore there was a requirement to include it in as many plays as possible.
Possibly. I mean, I haven't done a proper cross analysis here, but there might actually be this kind of scene does feature in a number of plays at about the same time in about the same playhouse, so it could be a thing, and I think that's a reasonable shout. And yeah, so it's we've gone from this, you know, he's a fighter, he's a lover, he's a he's doing lots of things. I kind of think that the character of Bussy is, at this stage at least, a bit of a red herring. I'm much more interested in the court overall. That, you know, you're bringing him into the court for reasons, and things are going on, and you know, there are 5 dead bodies. Okay, it happened off stage, but we are 5 people down. 1 bit of flirting and 1 actual affair has been consummated. This is quite a world we're in here, and conjuring that world. We were talking about costumes earlier, I think the costuming for this has got to be tight. This has got to really demonstrate this court. I think we're all struggling a bit because we've got so many random French names coming at us. And often I'm not 100% certain what gender they are, actually, from the names. Every so often I'm going, oh, that's a bloke. And so I'm slightly, because figuring out what's going on here, because I think that's really important to the narrative as well. Especially with what's going on with this friar here and what's going on with this extended scene. So it's doing really interesting things. We can talk about thoughts about this scene, the wooing of the friar. The work of Friar's work is never done. I'll go to Aliki, then Lynn, then Eric.
I mean, yeah, if you want to know what women are like and how to get into bed with them, a celibate is always the best man to ask. I'm interested in how this reflects on our question about virtue, because surely a friar ought to have a version of virtue that isn't about murdering people and sleeping with other people's wives. Just a thought.
Well, to be fair, most stage friars are quite happy for the whole extramarital affair thing, or at least they don't really intervene. I mean, I'm thinking of "'Tis Pity," where it's going, the friar, he knew it was wrong, but he never really put his foot down, did he? He never really put forward a proper moral example. Whereas this guy's actively complicit. he's clearly eyeing up the next day job. Anyway, Lynn.
Maybe Bussy isn't really what we're focusing on. But yeah, what are we supposed to think of him? I mean, there is a world where this sort of the blunt soldier is a type we admire. Someone's always true to himself, that he has a kind of personal integrity, even if he doesn't fit into civilized society particularly well. But having an affair with a married woman really seems to go against that. Like, what version of honor are we talking about? Because it really, it's very confusing. And I mean, and not only do we have the sneaking around behind the count's back. I'm gonna miss you so much, dear. Oh, I'll see you in the morning, right? But there's this game that she speaks of briefly, and the friar talks about. You have to pretend that the woman isn't actually interested. She's got to play hard to get. So we have to be duplicitous in all these different ways, and I'm just finding that really difficult to stomach, let alone admire. And I'm wondering how the original audience would have responded to all of this.
I will go to somebody else. I've got lots of tumbling thoughts going on here. Eric, did you have something?
I mean, I was just steering wildly because I didn't really know what to do with this scene. It's like, because you've got Monsieur and you've got Montsurry, and it's like the names are a bit too similar sometimes. Especially because they've not been properly introduced. So it's like, oh yes, he's my husband. He's not my husband. Oh, my husband is dead. My lover is dead. And it's like, who on earth are you talking about?
Yes, because we haven't talked about Monsieur's attempt to woo here, which is so crass and so awful. And of course, at the beginning of the play, we were talking about virtue, and he's hiring this virtuous guy. Wants to give money to this virtuous guy, and he seems like a reasonably upright kind of chap. And then we get this scene. What a git! He really isn't very nice at all. And yeah, so there's all sorts of interesting questions about what this play is doing here, and we will get more data later on about what this play is doing, and why people are doing things. Some of which has been hinted at, but we haven't necessarily actually quite got to the kernel seed at the centre of this. Also, just to point out, all of this has been watched by the maid, Pyrhot. So who has explicitly turned to the audience, says, "I'm going to watch what happens." So all sorts of things there. Brian, then Rachel.
Since you've commented on the Monsieur's clumsy and awful attempt to court Tamyra, or whatever we call it, another line that I really like in another ethical glint at a different character follows on that when Montsurry encourages his wife to endure these advances and says, "That prince doth high in virtue's reckoning stand, that will entreat a vice and not command. We admire him, you should admire him, because he only asks you to do bad things. He doesn't command you to do them. That's virtue."
Wow, that really is quite an interesting ethical position to be holding.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's it. Just going to throw that one in.
Yeah, a little bit of light harassment is virtue. Hey, Rachel.
That's certainly the kind of virtue that Monsieur seems to embody. He's talking about, what virtue are you guarding here, lady? It's like, it's a second maidenhead, and that's just a word. And you're clearly not an honest woman because you're at court, and if you were really an honest woman, you wouldn't be here. He's particularly horrid. And in a glorious kind of way.
Yeah, and talking about what the original audience would have thought of this, I mean, we're going back, I've already indulged in one or two jokes myself, but overtly anti-French position where you can basically paint this awful venal court because they're French and it's fine. And there is a tradition for the English being mean to the French and the French being mean to the English, and so long as you keep it to a certain level, that's kind of fair play. This play is possibly starting to drift a little into the unrepentant, unremitting jingoism that starts to get more of a problem. Alan,
I'm just wondering whether the use of the friar in this context is actually, because this is a post-Reformation play, is partly, he's one of those dodgy Catholic types.
Yes, and that's sort of what the literary friar does most of the time. It's often not as it's often more avuncular than here, but they're often always played as this kind of the overt display of the abuse of the clergy, that in part sparked a lot of the rhetoric for the Reformation. So yeah, it's part of that. It's absolutely part of its matrix and its logic. You don't need a backstory, a much introduction to the friar. You can just say, here's a friar, he will act as our pander. That's a perfectly logical piece of stage convention. And that's why I keep focusing on, for a production, we need to really paint this court right. We need to make this court function. We need to make the society function, and then the characters, I think, make a lot more sense. Whereas I think in that first scene where everyone's going, well, why is he doing this and why is he doing that? And actually, as the play progresses, that will become more clear as we meet all these other people, even the ones who haven't been brutally slaughtered. I can't even remember who died, but we met them. That's quite a power move. It makes the doubling for the rest of the play so much easier, because there are 5 characters of stroke of a pen have been taken out. Okay, final thoughts. Obviously, it's early in the text. Because this is a maximalist approach, we have got sort of the additions. And so there is already, as it were, a version of this that is probably 5-10 minutes. At least this act is about 5 maybe 10 minutes shorter. So there are some, potential cuts and logics to trimming it down. It is not an excessively long play, certainly not for a tragedy. So it's not like actually that is necessarily a thing. I think it's that element that we've got a lot of speeches that perhaps seem long. Rather than are long, whereas the speech that was long actually whipped past in many ways. So it's an interesting question about actually tactics for a production. I want to keep us focused on that sort of general area. Aliki, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I'm still thinking about the relationship between this play and classical tragedy. And one of the things that occurred to me is that When the Athenian classical playwrights want to show you something unpleasant or horrible or vile, they always set it in Thebes, which is over the mountains rather than across the channel.
Yeah.
Bad things always happen in Thebes.
Or in Corinth.
Eric, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I feel like, I don't know, because like that big scene that was when we first introduced Bussy to court, I feel like it was a lot of characters with, like, okay, maybe the names could have easily gone over my head and stuff, they weren't introduced, but it's kind of like, who are these people? They're very similar. They're like, aside from it's basically the cliqueiness of these 5 people and then the cliqueiness of the other 5 people on the stage, and it's kind of like, it makes me wonder how on earth this would be staged. Like, okay, you can kill them off and, you know, get them to double as other people, but still, what on earth is going on there?
Yeah, it's that again, that problem of the visuals. I think it would be much easier to see these cliques moving and bustling about. I mean, if anyone knows the musical Merrily We Roll Along, there is a song about the blob. Meet the blob. This is very much like that. A social set of people who are all clinging together and move as a mass, and then get killed as a mass later on. Presumably, they freeze it and drop it over in the Antarctic. Anyway, deep cut there. Brian, any final thoughts?
No, I mean, I'm continuing to evaluate for myself what I think the notion of virtue is. Very interested in the suggestion that it has antique precedents. It feels to me like that's still going to be key as we follow through. I'm very intrigued by Robert's suggestion that part of what seems weak in the play can be addressed by focusing on the court and making that function. It wouldn't have occurred to me, and it's why one of the reasons I like hanging out with this group. You guys think of stuff I never would have. So we'll see how that plays out. Thank you.
Of course, I could turn out to be horribly wrong. We'll see. Alan, any final thoughts?
I must admit, I'm still having trouble grasping who the heck is who. Even after we've got all those relatively short-lived characters who we met, who then all disappeared and only get killed off in reported events. I've still got no real handle on the hierarchy of the ladies, which is, I think, one of the key issues in this. And again, it's something that might be clearer if we got better descriptions of what is actually happening on stage in terms of the movements, in terms of the groupings, who's talking to whom, who's deferring to who.
I mean, in a sense, it shouldn't be so complicated because, say, the core company is relatively small, and so it should actually get a little clearer for us as readers. I don't think it's actually a problem in production. I suspect it's just us as readers really struggling. We've had that a few plays of late, where the visual dynamic is so important to understanding what the hell is going on. Rachel, any final thoughts?
Not much. I'm just trying to figure out how the question of virtue is going to play out amongst the ladies. I think that's going to be an interesting parallel, sort of interest in virtue there.
Yeah, though I suspect not well. Lynn, any final thoughts?
Yeah, there's a lot of things about this text. The verse, the structure with the long messenger speech rather than showing the violent action. And just the values that that are portrayed in the play world that make it feel a little like an artifact rather than a living thing. So, something that I am wondering, like, how would you take a text like this and bring it to life on stage and not make it feel like a kind of exercise in oldie timey medievally-ness? She said very eloquently.
I'm not sure it's specifically medieval. I think it's the sort of neoclassical tradition that's happening, which is more literary, which is contributing to the style of the verse. I don't think it's contributing to the action, actually, a lot of the time. And certainly for our production, we can have gauze and they can have a fight scene behind it while he's telling the story. I think there's plenty there. But yeah, there is definitely a relationship between what Chapman thinks is high art here. I think there is a real sense of that in this text, and that might be a problem.
I mean, that's interesting that you just mentioned the neoclassical thing. Is this actually sort of adumbrating the Enlightenment and neoclassicism in the following century, which I personally, as an early modernist, feel is like the worst thing that ever happened to European culture, but that's just me.
On that, back to Eric.
Yeah, I was going to say that, well, basically, as we've all kind of said, we kind of need to figure out who's on whose side as well. Just kind of because that cliquiness that I mentioned earlier, kind of like it can feel like a really good back and forth, like, oh, she's the new girl, or oh, he's the new guy, whatever. But it feels like, if you don't know who you're talking about or whatever, it needs to, be much more clear. And I don't know how you would do that one, would you? Although I guess you would you would probably go, put some mics on one side and then other mics on. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. Panning and post-production stuff. Anyway, moving on. Yes.
Okay, well, we have 2 more sessions to get to grips with this. We will return, and in fact, you could even join us, not for this play. This play happened ages ago, but we do have sign-ups for these online sessions, and you can join in. They can be found on our website, beyondshakespeare.org. In fact, there's usually a link to that in the show description, not necessarily to the actual sign-up forms, but you can sign up and join us. It's entirely free, and so long as you can get here on a presently on the Zoom, but who knows, in the future it may be via some sort of other complicated display system that I don't understand, because technology keeps changing and I'm living in the past and falling apart. Anyway, all that remains is to thank all the wonderful readers for all their wonderful reading. Thank you very much, everyone, and goodbye. Affectation of outlandish scum.